So I am Zach Clark,
And I'm Abby Clark.
and I'm one of the pastors at Mercy Road Church in Anderson. And we got the opportunity to attend the Multiply Indiana Pastors Retreat last year in Tennessee. And it was just such an incredible experience for us. Going in, we didn't really know what to expect. We've been to some pastoral retreats before and know that some of them don't feel super restful. Some of them are more networking than anything. But we were going in pretty tired. We'd had a hard year. Personally, the family and ministry, our church was in its first year, and just looking for rest. And got there, and the setting was amazing in the woods of Tennessee in the fall. It was great. And we got to our room, and we're like, oh wow, this actually feels like a retreat. I'm not just in like a Marriott.
Yeah, we got to leave the kids behind, and we got to have this about 4-hour car ride, and we got to just spend that time just being together and being able to talk without being interrupted by kids in the back or whatever's going on. And so we really did start off the trip just with that car ride and being able to just be with each other, and that was huge for us.
Yeah, and then when we got there, we knew some people, but didn't know a ton of people, and got going. Didn't really know what to expect. Had never heard of the speaker that they had brought in for the weekend, but knew almost immediately that this was going to be just a huge weekend for us, because they kicked off with the idea of Sabbath, and I was like, I know what that is. I'm a pastor, but it's so far from a regular thing for me, and it seems so far-fetched. But then right away, they made it seem like it was possible. And I think for the first time in ministry, we were like, what if we actually could feel rested in ministry?
Yeah, it did kick off such a neat thing in our lives. At the time, I was our family was just in survival mode. I was working night shift as a nurse, and we were passing kids off basically in between shifts. And, there were things in our lives that were lacking. Our family time was lacking. Our marriage, was lacking just in that relationship aspect. And so going to get on this trip and being able to spend time with each other, we really got to reevaluate really our life goals, our plans, our jobs, and it just kick-started just us having the conversation.
Yeah, because we always kind of talked about that'd be a great idea, but it doesn't work for us because of our work schedules and our ministry schedules. And then I remember you just randomly looked up a job posting and saw that there was a nursing position available in Anderson that was during the day and no weekends and no holidays. And we were like, oh wow, we could do this, but we would have to change everything about our lives.
Yeah.
And so we spent the weekend planning on how to reshape our lives. That weekend, we decided you were going to change jobs, and we were going to go through this whole big transition and change insurance and everything. But because we really wanted to be able to rest as a family, to Sabbath, and to operate from a place of being rested. And so the whole weekend we asked questions, what about this and what about that, and how do you do it with kids? And the people who were leading the weekend were so patient and so gracious. They're like, hey, give yourself grace. Like, you're not going to walk home and have the perfect, beautiful, holy Sabbath the first week, but over time, you'll learn how to rest. And so over the past year, we've been learning that. And we haven't been perfect at it, and there's been seasons that got busier and we missed it here or there and haven't always had it perfect, but we are so much closer now than we've ever been.
Yeah, and the speakers, they were a couple, and they also had children. And one of the things that I thought was going to be the most difficult was practicing Sabbath with your children. I always thought, how in the world do people do that? Like, I can figure out how to Sabbath on my own, or maybe, with Zach, but how do you do it with your children? And they gave so many great tools and options just, to make it work for a family and having kids.
Yeah, and so from there, we went home and we listened to a book on rest on the entire way home, the whole 4-hour ride, and we said, we're going to do this. And this year, looking back, I don't know how we would have made it through this year without that word from God saying, you need to rest. If you don't do this, you're going to end up burned out again. I've burned out in ministry and left the church I was at, just so exhausted and tired. And We're arguably doing more now than ever, but honestly feel like we can keep going because we know how to rest, we know how to say no, we know how to say I can't do everything. And so if you're like me, like I cannot recommend enough.
Yeah, we just had a really great, I don't remember how many days it was, but just being able to unplug, get away, take the time away, and just talk and figure out, what does our marriage look like? What does our family look like? What do we want it to look like in the future? And, just taking that time away sometimes can be really hard, but it was so beneficial for our family. And I know it's going to be beneficial just going back to those different things and tools that we learned for years to come.
And it was so great to hear how God is moving in other multiple Indiana churches and getting to meet the pastors of those churches, some in urban Indianapolis and rural northern Indiana, and all these people that now we get to check in and see how their churches are doing and how they're doing. And so look forward to seeing them again in the future and hear how God has moved in them, and hope that they have found the same amount of rest that we have.
Yeah. And, oftentimes with church planting or just, being in a new church, being in ministry can be very lonely. And so being able to, connect with those other pastors, wives, support staff, anybody else, that are going through the same things that you are is huge. It's really an amazing experience. Even though this was a marriage retreat for, couples, we had the opportunity where we could speak to others. We could ask for guidance. We could, go to these people and say, hey, we're experiencing this. What's your experience been? So, there's a lot of opportunity with the marriage retreat.
And I want to encourage you, if you are on the staff of a church plant, whether you're the lead pastor, an intern, children's pastor, whatever your position is, God has called you to an essential work, that there are people in your community that don't know how much Jesus loves them and don't know that there's a new life for them available if they would step into accepting Jesus. And the truth is, you can work really, really hard to find those people, but at the end of it, you're going to be so tired and so drained, and you're going to be a byproduct of your ministry. Don't let that be your story. Don't let that be your story. Don't act like you have to just grit it, like push forward and push through this and make it get to the end and like what you did with your life. I hope that your wife, your husband, your kids, your family love that you are in ministry and don't hate the church because it stole you away. And so if you are on that staff, God has called you to a purpose and he has a job for you, but if you are not healthy, you won't get to see the fruit. So if you are considering this, I would definitely recommend check out this retreat.